Hi, thank you for coming to this lecture. And I'm Yoshi, a psychologist who is studying psychopathologies and mindfulness meditations and cognitive behavior therapies and so on. I really appreciate all of you coming here instead of going to beaches or instead of going to dancing halls and so on. Today, I will talk about you about mindfulness meditation, and especially we might call it POV experience of your cognitions. You know the word POV. This means point of view, and this is techniques used in movies, cinemas, and usually camera crew who is recording the scene is outside the scene, who is not belong to the scene, and he stand outside the scene, and but in PO movies, camera crew himself herself is main actor in the story. Then the camera records what he himself or what her herself experience. So it might be first person experience of recording. Such a technology is called POV, and many of psychological experiment is third person view. So psychologists, researchers usually record how people react, how people say, what people say, and so on outside the context of the participant. But meditation is what you experience in yourself, what, how you see yourself, and so on. So first, we might start a definition of mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation is defined as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. This is very brief description presented by John Kabat-Zinn, who is founder of modern mindfulness techniques. Indeed, mindfulness comes from a very ancient Buddhist tradition, but Kabat-Zinn revitalized in the modern terms, modern psychological techniques. And while this is very brief description, but this captures the core or nectar of mindfulness. And what is unique about mindfulness research? Uh, I'm also researching psychotherapies, especially cognitive behavior therapies or psychopathologies and so on. And in that context, what is unique about mindfulness is its outcomes are very wide ranging. For example, in the case of cognitive behavior therapy, uh, you might develop and evaluate it for the purpose of preventing depression or reducing social anxiety and so on. So many of the successful psychotherapies are very narrow focused, but the effect of mindfulness is very wide ranging. Many types of psychopathologies, or to be more precise, we might say human suffering, many kind of human suffering. And in addition, it will lead to enhanced well-being of each person. And one unique feature is wide range of outcomes. And in addition, its working process is not monolithic, but includes many pathways or many boundary conditions and so on. And in this lecture, I would explain some of these, and this will lead to how mindfulness works and when mindfulness works and so on, and for what kind of outcomes. And as I mentioned earlier, mindfulness is defined as attention, which is present moment and non-judgment. So, this is while this is a very brief definition, but psychologists often rely on operational definitions. Operational definition means how you measure and how concrete way, in a concrete way, you uh, manipulate or measure it. And here we focus on the measure of a mindful state. And indeed, in this research area, many measurement study converge that mindfulness is divided into five facets, uh, although related and closely tied, but uh, can be divided into five facets. Now, what is five facets? And here we show the five facets. The first is observing all your experiences. This is what I try to deliver by the word POV experience. And you can also describe your experience. Like cinema directors, you can tell story about what you experience. And third facet is acting with awareness. You are noticing what you are thinking and what you are doing. Uh, Indeed, we often fall into a state of uh, not awareing or some kind of autopilot. For example, you are having snacks and thinking about what happens that day, and so you just deliver a snack, a piece of potatoes and so on into your mouth without really noticing it. And you finally found your potato is empty. And such an autopilot is often observed in our life. And acting with awareness is the just opposite of such thing. And non-judging is the fourth dimension. And this is exactly what appears in the brief definition by John Kabat-Zinn. People often tend to be too critical about your experiences. Uh, I'm not good at focusing on things. I'm easily distracted. I'm easily annoyed and so on. But not judging, not criticizing yourself. This is one of the important dimensions. And the final one is non-reactivity. What is non-reactivity? In every day, we experience a lot of emotions, and sometimes such emotion soon go away. But the other time, such emotion determine your following actions. For example, if you feel somewhat annoyed and but maybe 10 seconds later, the annoyment will have gone elsewhere. But the other time, you feel annoyed, and then your friend come to say come to your come to you and say hello, but you are annoyed and well, what is your intention and so on. This is a reactivity. Non-reactivity is not so much influenced by your emotion, and as you may guess, mindfulness is rooted in Eastern tradition. Eastern tradition means philosophies in India, China, including Japan. So one might expect Japanese people score higher on, for example, American people on this mindfulness dimension. But the opposite is indeed true. Uh, this is scores we obtained in Japan, and the center is what depicting what is obtained in United States or Canada. This means Japanese people are less mindful, less mindful. Ironically, this is what data tells us. And while psychometrically or statistically, five dimensions can be divided, but these five can be further converged into two broad dimensions. One is self-regulated attention, and the other is orientation to your experience. This is how you see your experience, or judgment, or non-judgment, and so on. So, to brief, mindfulness is consisted of attention and experience. So when we go back to the original definition of Kabat-Zinn, exactly it say two things: attention and attitude. So statistical study indeed converge on the original definitions. Then we move on to the closer look at of these two ingredients of mindfulness. One is attention, and to be more precise, it's attentional control. So not that your attention wander freely on. Such is not mindfulness. Your attention is your own purpose. Now, what is the benefit of such attention? And the other facet is attitude, how you see your experience. We introduce two important uh, concepts around the mindful attitude. So we first briefly look at how your attention change after a repeated practice of mindfulness training. Indeed, researchers find multiple facets of attentions are enhanced. And a study published about 10 years ago, which says facet of attention which is improved depends on the stage of your meditation practice. At the earlier stages, when you are novice, you can gain a more focused attention and more selective attention. But in the later stage, when you become more expert, your attention becomes more unfocused. Unfocused does not mean your attention is wandering. Uh, This is quite different. Unfocused attention means your awareness is so broad. So before you can uh, notice only sub portion of your experiences. But after repeated practice, you notice many wide ranging things. And this is what is brought about on attention by mindfulness meditation. So, how such enhanced attention bring benefit to you? Indeed, there are several ones, and uh, one is decentering. Decentering means you are not overly focused on your negative thoughts. For example, if you experience some negative thinking, I'm not good at these things. And when you stick to that thinking, your mood will deteriorate and your motivation going down and so on. But even when such negative thinking occurs, but uh, you can think, just it is just a thought. It is just one mental phenomenon which goes through and come and go, which come and go. This is only fleeting mental phenomena. Such view of your thinking will prevent you from depression, anxiety, so on. And this is hypothetical model I proposed years ago. Here we say there may be a common working mechanism of many psychotherapies. Uh, of course, this includes meditations and cognitive behavior therapy, more talk-based, discussion-based psychotherapies, and there are still other kind of psychotherapies called experiential or person-centered or focusing. And I propose all these kind of psychotherapies shares the process of enhanced attention. You observe yourself, and as a result, you gain more decentered or you might say more detached view of your experience. You are not stick to or you are not entangled with your experience. This will lead to a reduced depression, anxiety, and so on. And some years later, I obtained evidence supporting this theories. Um, what is very enjoyable in research career is your proposal is some years later proven or disproven by your student. So such collaboration is so much fascinating thing about researching career. And indeed, this is work with our student. And what he found is exactly what I expected years later. This is first, attentional control enhance mindful attitude, and this lead to decentering or detached view of your experience. And this lead to lower worrying, lower anxiety. So exactly, attention lead to attitude, and attitude weaken, free you of anxiety. And this is what we found. later. And another benefit of attention is relating to not a reduced symptom but enhanced well-being. And interestingly, this is also collaboration with our student. And what he thought was that observing, or you might say a POV experience of your cognition, is definitely at the root of mindfulness. For example, when I take a shower, I stay alive to the sensation of the water on my body. I notice how food and drink affect my thought, bodily sensations, and emotions, and so on. And this is exactly the core of mindfulness. But uh, we indeed had a hard time because when you measure observing, it often positively correlated with anxiety. This means it can sometimes enhance your anxiety or depression. So, adverse effects, or sometimes it reduces your well-being. So, we thought, what is the boundary condition observe where observing turn to well-being or ill-being? What we found with our student is attention is a boundary condition. Indeed, uh, adverse effect of mindfulness is often observed in novice people. On the other hand, experts do not experience such things. And what differentiates these people? This may be trained attention. And we exactly found this pattern. And this graph shows on the x-axis degree of observing. Uh, this means to the lighter end means more observing of your experience. And the y vertical axis is your well-being. The higher you are happy. And when we examine the relation between these two axes, indeed there are two types of people who gain well-being because of observing, and those who do not benefit. What is the difference? And these two lines are indeed different, divided by participants' degree of attentional control. Those who have a high attentional control benefit from observing on well-being, but those with less attentional control, unfortunately, he cannot obtain benefit. But this is not bad news. With experience, it has been repeatedly shown attention goes up. So with practice, you finally lead to such kind of person. So there is nothing to be pessimistic, but it only tells practice matters. So then we go to the other facet of mindful attitude. And indeed, there may be many of the beneficial processes which finally lead to one's well-being. and one's consideration of other people and so on. And but because time is limited, I focus on two things in this lecture. First is called equanimity. This may be unfamiliar word. What is equanimity? Uh, the definition is an even-minded mental state or dispositional tendency toward all experience or object, regardless of their origin or their affective variance. This means our mind tends to favor one experience over another. Uh, when you see anxiety, you are going to suppress it. But on the other hand, when you feel happy, you cling to that happiness. But sticking to and clinging to happiness will often damage your happiness, unfortunately. So, this equanimity is expressed in my own word, maybe that observing experience, what you see, what you hear, and so on, while not attached to, not stick to, not cling to one particular thing. And also, you do not avoid any of them. You try, for example, you do not try to suppress your anxiety, ignore your depression, and so on. Seeing all of them equally, and still, it still uh, hears sounds very abstract thing, but uh, in the process of emotion, equanimity can be explained, explained in more concretely. And this is means a schematic expression of the process of emotion. Usually, emotion arises by some kind of stimulus, and then emotion goes up. But the trajectory differ people to people. Some people experience very rapid rise in emotion, and it soon cool down. But for the other type of people, uh, these people are who trying to avoid their experience. These people tend to experience trajectory not so strong emotion, but last longer. And there may be another sort of people who is usually called warriors or luminators and so on, who experience a very strong emotion and who attach to or repeat that emotion. So, emotional experience uh, longer, lasts longer, and lasts stronger. And we so this figure shows three kind of people. So then, which kind of people is most adaptive? Indeed, this is a kind of person who rise rapidly and cool down rapidly. Uh, in fact, I was from high school, and my high school was based on Buddhist traditions. So, unlike many other high schools, uh, many of our teachers are Buddhist monks, and they teach not only Buddhist but mathematics, English, and so on. They cover all kind of subjects, but many are Buddhist monks. And what was impressive was uh, even though they are Buddhist monks, they often become angry. A Buddhist monk is not a person who never be angry. But this is not the case. Buddhist monks often get so angry and so hot, became so hot. But what was impressive is 1 second later, he soon forget his anger. So recover very rapidly. So Buddhist monk is not those who experience low emotion. Indeed, they experience very strong emotion, but soon they forget it. And this is indeed what equanimity means. Not attached to or not avoiding, just experience and just say goodbye. Yeah. So to summarize, adaptive emotion built from the concept of equanimity is f- uh, they indeed feel emotion, even intensely, but do not persevere or avoid. So, in other words, intense but circumscribed. This means limited time and limited occasions. Such emotions without avoidance are adaptive. And indeed, we get empirical evidence supporting these things. Uh, and what we found was intense negative emotions indeed reduce later anxiety symptoms. Sounds too contradictory, but that's what the case. And indeed, this appeared in a journal, and this journal has a very high reputation in the field of cognitive behavior therapy. Just I say. And what we examined is the emotional experiences of participants, not emotional tendencies. What's the difference? Uh, when you measure emotions in your patient, we often use such question as, uh, "I tend to feel anxious," or "I'm always in low mood," and so many of the emotion measures I I usually means include uh, questions such as I usually experience such experience. I often be in such a state. I frequently get angry and so on. So very stable characteristics of emotion. But in this study, we use such question. This is very circumscribed or situation specific emotional experience. For example, someone criticized you. So the time I feel, for example, very upset or I felt nothing. Or the other example is I see a sad movie. In that situation, I feel so sad and so on. So this is a very circumscribed emotion, like these kind of people who get hot but soon forget. Such type of emotion. And indeed, what we found was this graph means vertical axis means more anxiety symptoms. And x-axis, horizontal axis means to the when you go right, it means more intense emotional reactions to that situation. It's a situational emotion, not a trait or a dispositional emotion. So, what was uh, counterintuitive is strong, and this x axis means negative emotion. So, this means strong emotional reactions indeed reduces anxiety. But as you notice, there is indeed a boundary condition. So the other kind of people have no effect. And what we divide these two lines? Indeed, this was based on people's tendency to avoid emotions. Uh, these dashed line in red means people who tend to avoid their emotion. For such people, intense negative emotions do nothing. And in addition, they locate always higher. So those who tend to avoid their emotion tend to experience more anxiety. But if you do not avoid your emotion, uh, strong emotional response even reduces anxieties. It may be counterintuitive, but it captures the very nature of equanimity. And the final thing is the moral attitude of practitioner. As you notice, mindfulness today is not religious, called secular everyday one, not tied to Buddhist temples and so on. But its origin is indeed a Buddhist tradition. And each religious or spiritual tradition has its own moral codes. And uh, practitioner in each religious tradition may trained in moral conduct. And what we found, this is indeed a study with another study, uh, moral attitude of, especially moral of caring others and be cautious about not harming others. Such kind of moral is very beneficial to mindfulness. And this was again collaboration with our student, and he found so sorry this figure is in Japanese, but explain each meaning. Uh, the x-axis, the horizontal axis means more mindfulness. To the right, more mindfulness. And what is the y-axis? This you feel very surprised, but um, the y-axis means more aggression. The higher the x-axis, the more higher the aggression. And this means uh, for some people, practicing mindfulness enhance that person's aggressions. This seems very ironical and sad news. But you may remember some real world example where some cult or sect people uh, behaved violently and so on. And indeed, there is a but uh, there is exactly the people, the other kind of people do not exhibit enhanced aggression as a result of mindfulness. And this is who behave in a way caring other people and who try to not to harm other people. So people with the heart of care will not exhibit adverse effect of mindfulness. But people without such moral attitude, mindfulness work in the wrong way. And when you hear such result, you may be anxious, but indeed there is no need to be anxious because in the mindfulness training, uh, training instruction include not only attentional control but also how you care yourself, how you can be kind to yourself and people around and people you do not know. Indeed, a mindfulness program include a training in kindness, loving, caring. So, uh, full set of mindfulness is equipped with protection against aggression. And related to this, there is very curious episode of very expert mindful instructor. Very famous mindful teacher was in America was invited to U.S. Army to deliver mindfulness training to soldiers, and that master teacher was indeed very criticized for visiting U.S. Army. So critical people said, "You train soldiers' attention, so enhance their accuracy in shooting, or when you train soldier with mindfulness, uh, they become more calm or not disturbed by emotions. So they very calmly kill people." But that famous mindfulness teacher indeed visited U.S. Army and delivered mindfulness training. Then what happened after that? This is a very curious thing. Uh, Soldiers who attended the mindful masters class all says, "Okay, I like to quit. I like to retire from U.S. Army. Sorry, goodbye." So they all left U.S. Army. So that is power of mindfulness. So it is quite different from attention training, just to shoot correctly and so on. Quite different. Mindful training will make people go away from fight, war, and something. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you're mindful, calm, and enjoyable rest of days. Thank you so much.